Okay, welcome to Seven Continents, One Story, and I genuinely cannot wait for this one.
Glad to have you with us today. This is going to be a good one.
I've been looking forward to this all week, honestly.
I'm Ethan, 13 Maltese, and way too obsessed with history for someone my age.
I'm Nils, professor of history, originally from Sweden.
And I'm Celine, joining you from Edinburgh, Scotland. I read far too many history books in my spare time.
Every episode, we go deep into a story from one of the seven continents. Ancient stuff, modern stuff, stories that actually change the world.
Stories that deserve to be told properly, not just as a footnote in a textbook.
Because history is full of moments that still echo today if you know where to look.
History just hits different when you know the full story. See you next time.
Before we dive into today's episode, a quick word about our partner, Cyprus Real Returns. You know, I have always admired how ancient civilizations thought strategically about the future, and that is exactly what drew me to this partnership. Cyprus Real Returns offers something rare, guaranteed returns of 6 to 12% on Cyprus real estate investments with 100% security through the Cyprus Land Registry. What I really appreciate is the hassle-free approach. Professional management handles everything. And here is the part that excites me most. With solid returns, you can actually afford to travel to these incredible historical sites we talk about. Visit cyprusrealreturns.com to explore how strategic investing can fund your own historical adventures.
I want to tell you about a moment of decision. October the 27th, 1915. A man stands on the deck of a ship. The ship is being crushed. He can hear it. The sound of 3-inch-thick wooden planking breaking under pressure. The bow is rising, the stern is sinking, the masts are tilting. The Weddell Sea in Antarctica has frozen around his vessel over the past 9 months, gripping it in ice, slowly squeezing, and now the ice is winning. And this man, this extraordinary, stubborn, visionary man, looks at the ship he has loved, looks at the 27 men in his care, and says something remarkable.
What does he say?
Ship and stores have gone, so now we'll go home.
That is either the most composed thing ever said or the most in denial thing ever said.
With Ernest Shackleton, it is often hard to tell the difference.
The Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition of 1914 to 1917 is the most extraordinary survival story in the history of exploration, and one of the greatest tests of leadership ever documented. No one died. 28 men, the most hostile environment on Earth, stranded for 2 years, and every single one of them came home. Welcome to Seven Continents, One Story. I am Nils, your host and professor of history.
I am Celine, library worker from Edinburgh, and I have read every word written about this expedition.
I am Ethan from Malta, and I cannot wait to hear this.
Before we begin, an object. In my collection, I have a replica of the instrument that made survival possible. Not food, not shelter, not weapons, an instrument, a navigational instrument. Here is your first clue. It is roughly the size and shape of a small bow, a handle with an arm that can be raised and lowered. It uses mirrors and lenses. It has no batteries, no electronics, no moving parts beyond its own mechanism. And in the hands of a man who knew how to use it, in one of the most dangerous seas on Earth, in an open boat in the middle of winter, it made the impossible possible.
Navigation?
Navigation, the reading of the sun and stars. We will return to it. To understand what this expedition was, you need to understand what it was trying to do. And to understand that, you need to understand the era, 1914. The heroic age of exploration is at its climax and its end simultaneously. 2 years earlier, Robert Falcon Scott had reached the South Pole and died on the return journey. Roald Amundsen had beaten him there by 5 weeks, using dog sleds. The pole had been conquered.
So Shackleton needed something else.
He always needed something else. Ernest Henry Shackleton was born in Kilkea, County Kildare, Ireland, in 1874, the son of a farmer who became a doctor. Shackleton himself left school at 16, went to sea, and fell in love. Not with the sea precisely, but with the extremity of it.
What does that mean?
He was drawn to difficulty, specifically to the point where difficulty becomes impossible and then, somehow, becomes possible again. He had already made 3 expeditions to Antarctica. He had come within 97 miles of the South Pole in 1909, closer than any human had been, before turning back. He turned back deliberately. He wrote to his wife, "I thought, dear, that you would prefer a live donkey to a dead lion."
I love him for that.
So the pole was gone, taken by Amundsen. Shackleton proposed the last great prize, the first crossing of the Antarctic continent on foot, from the Weddell Sea on one side to the Ross Sea on the other, across more than 2,000 kilometers of ice and snow, through the South Pole itself.
Was this achievable?
Almost certainly not. Not in 1914, not with the equipment they had. But Shackleton did not know that yet.
There is something I have to mention here because it is too good not to. The advertisement.
The famous advertisement. Whether it is historically accurate is debated. No original copy has ever been found. But the story runs that Shackleton placed an advertisement in the Times of London that read, "Men wanted for hazardous journey. Small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful. Honor and recognition in case of success."
And people applied?
Over 5,000 people applied.
Either people in 1914 had extraordinary appetites for adventure, or the job market was terrible.
Both are true. Shackleton assembled a crew of 27 men plus himself. Scientists, sailors, cooks, a carpenter, a doctor, a photographer, Frank Hurley of Australia, who would produce some of the most extraordinary photographs of the century, and a ship, the Endurance.
Named after Shackleton's family motto.
Fortitude Invincimus. By endurance we conquer, he chose well. The Endurance left London in August 1914, the same week that the First World War began. They sailed south, through the Atlantic, down to the island of South Georgia, a remote mountainous island in the South Atlantic, home to a Norwegian whaling station that would later become extremely important.
And then
south again, into the Weddell Sea. The Weddell Sea is one of the most treacherous bodies of water on Earth. Ice forms early, moves unpredictably, and can trap ships with almost no warning. January 1915. The Endurance enters the ice pack. But the season turns early. The ice closes. And by January 19th, the Endurance is stuck.
Just stuck? Frozen in place?
The ship becomes what Shackleton called a beset ship, held fast in the ice pack, drifting with it, not sinking, not crushed, just held. For 9 months, the Endurance drifted in the Weddell Sea ice, carried by the rotation of the pack.
And the men just waited?
They adapted. Shackleton was a genius at keeping men alive psychologically as well as physically. He instituted routines, work schedules, entertainment, football matches on the ice, a gramophone, sing-songs. He gave every man a role and held the role to account.
He understood morale.
He understood it intuitively in a way that most military commanders of his era did not. Let me return to our object. Your second clue. The man who used this instrument most brilliantly on this expedition was not Shackleton himself. He was Shackleton's captain and navigator, a New Zealander named Frank Worsley. Worsley was the kind of navigator who could do things with this instrument that seemed impossible. In conditions where the sun appeared only briefly through fog and cloud, he could take a reading in seconds. With the ship pitching violently in storm-force seas, he could hold steady. The instrument uses the principle of measuring the angle between the sun or a star and the horizon. From that angle and from the time, you can calculate your position to within a few kilometers.
A sextant.
Hold that thought. We are not quite there yet, but very close. Let me tell you what happened to the ship. October 1915. The ice that has been pressing against the Endurance for months intensifies. The pressure ridges, walls of ice pushed up by competing flows, begin to squeeze the ship's hull. The Endurance was built to withstand ice. Its hull was reinforced. But no wooden ship can withstand the combined pressure of millions of tons of ice. The timbers begin to crack. The bow rises. The stern twists.
And Shackleton makes his statement.
He orders the men off the ship, onto the ice. They salvage what they can. 3 lifeboats, food, the tents, the navigational instruments. And on November 21st, 1915, the Endurance sinks beneath the ice.
The ship they came on gone.
Gone. Now, 28 men are standing on sea ice in the Weddell Sea in the Antarctic winter, with 3 small boats, limited supplies, and a simple plan. Wait for the ice to carry them north to open water, launch the boats, and somehow reach land.
How far away is land?
The nearest inhabited land, South Georgia Island with its whaling station, is over 1,300 kilometers away, across the most dangerous ocean on Earth.
Okay, I need a moment.
Take your time. 5 months on the ice, camped, waiting, rationing food, maintaining morale. April 1916. The ice breaks up enough to launch the boats. 28 men in 3 small open lifeboats. The largest is the James Caird, 7 meters long. Shackleton is aboard it with Worsley and 4 others. They sail for 5 days. They reach Elephant Island, a bleak, uninhabited rock off the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. The first land any of these men have stood on in nearly 500 days.
But no one would know to look for them there.
No one. Shackleton makes the decision that defines this entire story. He will take the James Caird and the 5 best men and sail to South Georgia, 1,300 kilometers, in a winter, in a 7-meter open boat.
In the Drake Passage, the most violent stretch of water on Earth.
In the Drake Passage, in winter, in a lifeboat.
And Frank Worsley navigates.
With his instrument, with the sextant. They sail for 16 days. 16 days of 50-foot waves, hurricane-force winds, near constant darkness, soaking wet, barely able to sleep. The rigging ices over. The boat threatens to capsize.
How did they survive?
Skill, experience, luck, and Worsley's navigation, which brought them to South Georgia within 1 mile of their intended landfall. After 16 days at sea, without GPS, in a storm, using a sextant and his own extraordinary skill.
But they do not arrive at the side of the island with the whaling station.
They arrive on the wrong side. 36 kilometers of unmapped, unclimbed mountain range between them and the station. No equipment for mountain climbing, no map, no guidance. Shackleton, Worsley, and a 3rd man, Tom Crean of Ireland, set out on foot across the mountains. They climb through the night in near zero visibility, navigating by instinct and the stars. Twice they attempt a route and are forced back. The 3rd route takes them down a near vertical ice slope. In daylight, they would have seen how dangerous it was. In the dark, they did not. They sat on a coiled rope and slid, hundreds of meters at speed into the unknown darkness below.
That is extraordinary courage.
They arrived at the Stromness whaling station on the morning of May 20th, 1916. 36 hours of continuous marching across unmapped mountains. The station manager, Thorolf Sorle, came out to meet the strange, filthy, half-wild figures at his door. He recognized Shackleton's eyes. He had known him before the expedition, and he wept.
And the men on Elephant Island?
Shackleton organized 4 rescue attempts. The first 3 failed. The ice would not permit approach. The 4th, on August 30th, 1916, he reached them. The 22 men who had been left on Elephant Island had waited 105 days under the 2 upturned lifeboats, surviving on seal and penguin. When Shackleton's rescue ship appeared, a man named Charles Green, the cook, looked out and said, "That's the boss." Just that, 2 words.
That's the boss.
All 28 men lived, every single one.
Here is the question I want to put to you both. It is April 1916. The boats have just reached Elephant Island, 28 men alive. You are one of the 22 Shackleton must leave behind while he attempts the boat journey to South Georgia. He has just told you, "I am going to attempt to sail to South Georgia and bring rescue. It may take months. You must stay here." The shelter is 2 upturned lifeboats. The food is whatever you can hunt. The chance of Shackleton making it across the Drake Passage in that lifeboat is statistically very low. Do you stay willingly? Do you volunteer to go with him? Or is this the moment you start to question whether any of this is survivable?
If I am honest, I think I would want to go with him. Staying and waiting feels somehow worse. Being active, doing something, even if it is terrifying, I think I would rather that than the passive waiting.
But the men who went had far lower odds than the men who stayed.
I know, but I think I would still choose to go.
The remarkable thing is that almost all 22 men who stayed reported the experience as ultimately survivable. The routine that Shackleton had instilled in them during 9 months on the ice continued on Elephant Island. They held each other together.
And what about you, Nils? Would you stay or go?
I think I would stay, because I would trust Shackleton to come back, and because the men who stayed needed someone to believe that, too. Every group needs someone whose function is to believe the thing might work out.
That is the most important job in any crisis, being the person who believes.
Your final clue. Frank Worsley navigated 16 days across the Drake Passage in a 7-meter open boat in winter, through storms that threatened to sink them with every hour, and brought 28 men within 1 mile of their target landfall after 1,300 kilometers at sea. The instrument he used was a sextant, a device that measures the angle between a celestial body and the horizon using a system of mirrors and a graduated arc, invented in the 18th century, unchanged in principle ever since. Worsley could only take 3 clear readings of the sun during the entire 16-day journey. 3. The rest of the time, cloud cover made observation impossible. From 3 readings, he calculated their position with an accuracy that seems impossible even now.
Worsley's sextant is held today in the Canterbury Museum in Christchurch, New Zealand. You can see it, the actual one.
Not a replica, not a type. That specific instrument, in that museum, the thing that brought 28 men home.
1,300 kilometers, 3 readings, 1 mile off.
Frank Arthur Worsley, born in Akaroa, New Zealand in 1872, he joined the Endurance Expedition because he had a dream, literally a dream, in which he navigated a ship through a street in London filled with ice blocks. He woke up, went to the address he had dreamed of, and found Shackleton's expedition office.
That is either the most wonderful coincidence in history or a very good story.
Either way, he signed on, and he became the invisible spine of the survival. Shackleton is remembered as the leader, rightly. But Worsley is the man who made the mathematics of survival work. His navigation was the difference between South Georgia and open ocean, between rescue and death.
Without Worsley, Shackleton reaches the Drake Passage in a 7-meter lifeboat with no reliable navigation and disappears.
Without Shackleton, Worsley has no expedition to navigate. They needed each other precisely. Frank Worsley. Remember the name? Remember the 3 sextant readings.
Remember the 1 mile.
1914. A ship. 28 men. An ambition to cross a continent. The ice closes. The ship sinks. The men camp on an ice floe for 5 months. They launch lifeboats. They make land. Their leader sails 1,300 kilometers across the most dangerous ocean on Earth in a 7-meter boat. Climbs an unmapped mountain range in the dark. Slides down an ice slope into the unknown. Walks 36 hours without stopping. And brings everyone home.
Not one life lost. Not one.
I have spent decades studying history. I have read about battles, revolutions, discoveries, collapses. And I can tell you what Ernest Shackleton did on that expedition, what all 28 men did, remains one of the most extraordinary collective human achievements I have ever encountered.
It makes me think about what people are capable of in the very worst conditions.
History is ultimately a record of what people are capable of, at their worst and at their very, very best. Until our next journey through time, keep history alive. What a journey through history today. You know, one thing I love about studying the past is it teaches us to think strategically about the future. That is why I am genuinely glad we are partnered with Cyprus Real Returns. They offer a strategic approach to building wealth, guaranteed 6 to 12% returns on Cyprus real estate, 100% secured through the Cyprus Land Registry, with professional management handling everything. The goal? Financial freedom to experience the history we love. With Cyprus tourism booming and property values growing nearly 8% annually, it is an opportunity worth exploring. Visit cyprusrealreturns.com to learn more.